There we go. All right. So today we're going to look at Hinduism. Now, all of us may not be interacting with Hindus specifically. However, as we go through the lesson, you're going to see that Hinduism is influencing our Western culture. So, come on. There we go.
There is.
All right, Hinduism. There it is. Okay, so you see this wonderful sign. It's Aum. This is the name of the Hindu god. You may be familiar with hearing it doing yoga and going Aum. You are not just going you are actually reciting the name of the Hindu god. Had another picture, but I couldn't find it. I may have not moved it into the new computer, but it shows how the Sanskrit name in the middle of that little reef, how each part speaks of Brahma. Okay, now I'm going to be speaking about Brahma, Brahman, Atman. Basically, they're all similar and yet different. They're different names of forms of the top Hindu god. And I'll get into more about their gods in a moment. But a lot of people practicing yoga will follow their instructor straight through into reciting Aum. As Christians, you are, by saying in the mantra Aum, you are seeking to become one with it. And most Christians don't know that. And that is a danger. Because you're seeking to become one with the Hindu god. This is not where you can interchange the name. The God of the Bible is not Brahma, Brahman, or Atman. He is Jehovah, and he's revealed himself to us through Jesus Christ, the incarnate one, by the power of his Holy Spirit. So by reciting Aum, you are praying to become one with the Hindu deity. And I don't think as Christians, any of us really want to do that. Understand that connection. Their yoga instructors may not even know that that is the connection, but it is. It is a form of prayer and worship. So, who is their God? Okay, their God is impersonal. There's no personality. There's no personhood to it. It is more like a force. And it's not a force for good or evil. It's a force. It's a neutral, and it plays games. And I'll get into that in a minute. But Brahma is the form of the top god, who is looked at as the creator. But again, not a personal creator. There's no intimate relationship between Brahma and the humans. In Hindu theology, Brahma looks at animals, plants, inanimate objects, and humans all the same, simply created things. Then you have Brahman. That's the reality behind everything. Now, this is going to get a little complicated because in Hinduism, everything's an illusion. Nothing is real except Brahman, who's the reality behind everything. If you could think of it like a dream. When you dream, that dream is not real, even if you wake up and think it is. Yet, within the dream, you have things that are real. Perhaps your spouse showed up in your dream. Well, you really are married to that person in the dream, but yet the dream itself is not real. It's an illusion. In Hinduism, everything you see, everything you hear, touch, taste is an illusion. Nothing is real. The Upanishads, which are one set of Hindu scriptures, describes life as we know it as Brahma's dream. So just like when we dream, it's not real, but it may have real elements in it: a chair, a desk, a book, a pen, a person that we know. But the dream itself is not reality. For the Hindu person, this is all an illusion. Which reminds me of the group Styx. Anyone remember that rock group? Okay. Welcome to the grand illusion. Come on in and see what's happening. You know, that whole song was based on Hindu beliefs. Everything is a grand illusion. You pay your ticket, you buy your ticket for the show, and you become part of the show, but nothing's real, which means we're not real. We are illusions. And that has effects within the society and the structure of society for Hindus in Hinduism. Okay, so everyone is told Hinduism, you have like 5,000 plus gods. Technically, yes, and kind of no. Like I said, follow along because it may get a little complicated. There's usually one deity that a clan, a family, a village will grab onto as their central deity. There'll be temples in the village, in the city, in the town, or the family will have a depiction of that deity. They know that the wooden idol is not the deity, it just depicts. So they're not worshiping the wood, they'll tell you, but what it depicts. And there really aren't 4,000 or 5,000 gods. What there is, how many of you saw the movie Avatar and know what an avatar is?
I don't know.
Okay, an avatar is a symbol of you. So we used to call them caricatures. You go to a fair, someone draws a cartoon of you. That is now known as an avatar, and it's been borrowed from the Hindu term for avatar. It's something that pictures you in a different way. So in Hinduism, you have avatars that may go by a different name. Shiva, the goddess of destruction, is actually a different form of Brahma. So Shiva is not a specific god, but the ultimate god having taken on a different form. This is not, as we Christians would look, that Jesus took on flesh. It wasn't a different form as the groups who deny the Trinity. Jesus took on flesh. These avatars, they just take on a different image, but it's Brahman behind everything, okay? Did everyone get that? So you have multiple gods, but they're really not multiple gods. They're just variations in appearance of the one God. Did that make it easier to understand?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. All right. Humanity. We're all gods. We're Brahman's illusion. We are his dream, as the Upanishads tell us. Again, that's one of the scriptures from Hindus. So in there, which is some of the oldest texts, in the Upanishads, you find that Brahman's having this dream. We are all part of the dream and therefore extensions of Brahman. That is why we're all gods. And that translated into the New Age movement. How many of you remember that from the 80s and 90s?
Yeah.
Everyone was going to be New Age. Well, that took that idea that we're all gods. I forget her name, but she would be on TV going, "I am God," and hold a glass of milk, and "I am drinking God." That's the idea. Everything and everyone in Hinduism is a god, and you are an extension of Brahman. So that leads into their view of fallen humanity. No, we didn't really fall. We just don't know we're gods. So the problem is not sin, but ignorance. If you knew you were really Brahman, you would behave like Brahman and everything would be fine. But since you don't know that, you have to learn that. And so life is about learning that, which brings us to their form of salvation, which is completely different than what we would term salvation. So for them, it's liberation from this life. It's, they call it moksha, and I'm going to go into more of that in a moment. But it's being liberated from this flesh, from the flesh and bones that we have, from this life. And it's going right back to being Brahman, with Brahman, and you are completely absorbed and you lose sentience. Okay, you no longer know that if this were true and I reached Brahman, I would no longer know that Nancy ever existed, because all I would know is I'm Brahman. So you lose your personhood, you lose your sentience, and you are completely annihilated, but not in the sense that you are gone. It's just that anything here that you knew is gone, and you're right back to being originally Brahman, which means I can actually go and live another dream life. So now the difference is Tamil Hinduism teaches salvation as a state of bliss. But this is the one you can use like Paul did in Acts 17 on Mars Hill, because it's the closest you're going to get to grace in the Bible. And it's not a pure picture of it, okay? But it's enough that you can use it as the jump point, just like Paul did when he saw the idol to the unknown God. Hey, I know the unknown God. This is who he is. You can use this as a jump off point for your friends who may be starting to dabble in a little Hinduism, okay? Because normally Hinduism, you got to work your way out of this illusion. You have to have knowledge, and you have to have devotions, and you have to have good deeds in order to go up the ladder till you're finally back and you attain moksha, which they also call nirvana. And you are basically reabsorbed into the Hindu deity. So Tamil Hinduism teaches that salvation, or a state of bliss, okay, where there's no more suffering, there's no more poverty, there's no more sickness, there's no more misery, but it only comes if the person abandons themselves into the hands of Brahman, who gives grace abundantly. And that's why I said this can be the jump off point in talking to someone who's kind of dabbling into Hinduism, emphasizing grace. Most Hindus are not Tamil Hindus, but a lot of Westerners are reading into Hinduism and they will come across Tamil. They may even say, hey, that's like Christianity. Look at that. It's right there. That's what you grab and you hold on to that you have to rely upon the grace of God for salvation. Okay? So in each of the variations of Hinduism, you will find something to latch onto. And just as Paul did in Acts 17, he didn't stay on the idol. He didn't say, well, let me tell you about the idol. He didn't at all. He said, listen, I see you're religious. You even have an idol to an unknown God, just in case. Let me tell you about him. And immediately goes into Jesus Christ, his life, his death, his resurrection, and the grace that we find because of what Jesus has done. Same thing when we are talking with Hindus. Okay, so in Hinduism, they're going to agree with you that Jesus is a God. Notice I said a God, not the God. They're going to agree with you. They're going to, oh, yep, because he's one among many gods. And I believe Rabbi Zacharias has a book out, actually, by One Among Many or something like that. And he really goes into detail how Jesus is just one avatar of Brahman, okay? Then you have Dharma. Now, this is your religious duties and your social duties. Don't confuse this with doing good for your neighbor. And the reason is your actions directly affect your life, this life, the next life you're born into, reincarnation, and your neighbor. You don't want to affect your neighbor's karma. And if you are compassionate, you do good to your neighbor, you're affecting their struggle to obtain moksha and become one again with Brahman. You should not do that. So karma is what you're worrying about in your own life. This is, I do good, I earn points, I come back in a higher state. I do bad, I lose points, I come back in a lower state. Okay, that's karma. And I hear a lot of Christians looking, if something bad happens to somebody who did something bad, oh, that's just karma. That's a Hindu belief. We don't believe in that as Christians. And, it is not the same as what you sow, you reap. That's totally different. Karma affects your eternal status and the level you come back in reincarnation. Okay. Then you have dhyana, which is meditation to become one with Brahma. This is the whole part of yoga. Okay. Yoga is prayer language physically displayed in the positions that you do. And it is part of that meditation to become one with the Hindu God as you recite the name, Aum. And so that's why I don't mind. You want to do calisthenics, you want to do aerobics or aerobics, fine. The moment you begin taking the prayer and worship positions and in conjunction with the Hindu deity's name, Aum, then I have a problem. And then we all should have a problem because it's praying to a false God. It is worshiping and wanting to become one with an antichrist. Okay. Some may even say with demonic forces. I don't know. I don't peer into stuff I don't know anymore. Okay. Then you have another little thing, which many non-educated Christians go, oh, look, they're getting baptized. Ritual bathing. This is an outside washing that cleanses them on the outside and moves them up the karma level. It's not washing away sins, but it is improving their position. So you have people who will consistently bathe in the Ganges, their holiest of all religions. But it is not like we would look at baptism as for the forgiveness of sins and washes away our sins. They have to keep doing it over and over and over again. So they have ritual bathing. But here's another connecting point. Hey, I understand that you do ritual bathing. Did you know Christianity has one Lord, one faith, one baptism because it's done? There's the jump off point. Okay. And then yoga, I've already gone into that. It is finding a release from the endless cycle of birth, death, and reincarnation. Now, some variants of Hinduism say that you're really only reincarnated 8 times. After that, you come back where you're not as bad as you used to be. And then after that time, you were then brought into moksha, and then eventually into Brahman. But again, it's meditation. Yoga is a form of sacrifice to their gods and to Brahman. Okay. When you reach moksha, you are absorbed. You become part of Atman, which is the full reality of the soul of Brahman. Okay. It's about liberation and enlightenment. Through your meditation, as you do the yoga poses, you are coming closer and closer and closer to Brahman, the Hindu deity, not the Christian God. Okay, so we got to make sure we understand that. And you, if you try to tell other Christians this who practice it, they will kick you on it and will not want to hear it. And nothing you can really do at that point but use the argument, who are you praying to when you say Aum? Because that's not the name of God from Scripture. Who are you sacrificing to when you do yoga? Did you know it was a sacrifice? Did you know it was a spiritual sacrifice? Did you know it was a form of prayer? So kind of have to, usually I tell people once, they don't want to hear it. I just don't bother anymore, because if they're not going to hear it, they're not going to hear it. Anyway, okay, yoga. It is physical, mental discipline for the purpose of spiritual liberation. We've gone through all of this. I want to hit the holiday Holi, H-O-L-I. How many of you have heard of color runs? Boise does one. That is a spring festival to the god Krishna. Okay? It marks the end of winter. And all the colors, just like we see the colors of the flowers and vibrance of spring, Holi is a holiday to the false god Krishna, an avatar of Brahman. And people get involved in this and don't know the origins of it. They just, throw the colors in the air. They used to do it in New York City. They'd fill the balloons with the chalk-like powder that was different colors, and they'd just smash it on people. And you have a big celebration at the end of winter, beginning of spring, because Hinduism is all about reincarnation, the life, death, life, death, life, death cycle. So winter, death, spring, life. So the color run in America comes from the Hindu holiday of Holi. Okay. There are other little nuggets in the scriptures of Hinduism. The Hindu Upanishads has a flood story. Okay. Now, the texts that we have today are copies from the earliest manuscripts of the Upanishads, which are about 3,000 years after they said they were written. Okay, so remember what we talked about with the manuscripts of Christianity and how important it was to remember we have manuscripts within a generation of the apostles, and we have fragments from during the life of the apostles. Keep that in mind when talking about the Upanishads, because depending on which publisher, there are variations, even in the English versions. I have 3 different versions, and there are several different stories because they're coming off of different manuscripts of the Upanishads. But every single one of them has a flood story. So I love using this because people say, well, the flood never happened. Really? Because we have a flood story in the Upanishads, we have it in Gilgamesh, we have other lesser known religion and writings where they talk about a flood. If all these nations have a flood story, there must have been a flood. Now, granted, they're a little different, but in the Upanishads, we actually have similarities. I have a quote from the Satapatha. Okay, it says, there lived in ancient times a holy man called Manu, who by penances and prayers had won the favor of the Lord of heaven. That is so close to the account of Noah, who found grace in the eyes of God. Again, you can grab hold of part of this, okay? Manu had 3 sons, Charma, Sharma, and Yapeti. Noah, Ham, Shem, and Japheth. Look at that. Isn't that amazing? 3 sons, 3
Wow.
sons. Okay, got some similarities here. Now, the differences happen after the flood. After the flood, there's also a boat. Although in the Upanishads, for Manu, it was a turtle shell that turns upside down and grows large enough for his 3 sons, his wife, and their wives. How many people does that make? 8. Very interesting. Okay, Manu, when the flood ends, he spends thousands of years meditating to earn a blessing from Brahma. What is that blessing? Brahma will never flood the earth again. Sound familiar? Okay. Noah, on the other hand, is declared righteous. See, Manu's got to earn it. He does it by meditating for thousands of years. Noah is declared righteous. Again, the stark difference. Vishnu, that's the avatar of Brahman, tells Manu how Manu can save the world. And that's by putting his children and their wives in the boat, okay? Noah, on the other hand, is told how God will save the world through saving Noah and his family. After the flood, both stories talk about the ark settling at the top of mountain ranges. Let me back up for a moment. Hindus are Aryan, as in Persian Aryan, okay? So how did they learn the story of the flood? From one of Noah's descendants who moved over to Persia, and then the Aryans come out of Persia and settle in the Indos. That would be India. Okay, so both have the ark resting on mountaintops, but it's a works versus grace difference. Again, Manu has to spend thousands of years meditating to get the blessing from Brahma. Noah is declared righteous. Now, in one of the resources that I'm going to put at the end, I have the list on the last slide. I want to read a little bit. This is regarding the Hindus who believe in a personal deity. Most don't. But God originates and sustains the world and reabsorbs it into himself. And his ultimate purpose is for the final liberation of all souls from the trammels of matter, which is itself its own lower nature. He binds that he may loose, and that he may lead all souls back to himself, whether they like it or not. This is the eternal game that he plays with his creation. Boy, isn't that a stark difference from the God who wasn't playing games with Noah. He was judging the world. And in fact, Manu, this wasn't judgment. Brahma was just tired of everybody. So he was just going to destroy everyone and start again. Not a compassionate, not a loving God. A capricious God at best. Arbitrarily choosing somebody, and then afterwards, in order for him never to flood the world again, Manu has to spend thousands of years in meditation. Noah is told, I'm judging the earth because it's become so wicked, but I will save you and the family. And Noah is declared righteous, just like the rest of us. So let me ask you this. Why the similarities in the flood stories?
Because they're historical.
Absolutely. Why the differences?
One is corrupt, has been corrupted.
Okay. Yep. And my dad taught me something long ago, and just a little bit of Peter Shore's wisdom. Satan likes to counterfeit things, but he never counterfeits them well. If you look at every other religion or cult or subset, they all have a little bit of truth, but it's so crooked. It would be like looking at a picture through a shattered glass. You may see some proper colors, but you won't be able to make out the image. And that is every single religion. Romans, favorite book, right? At least mine. It says, what can be known about God, and I'm reading Romans 1:19. What can be known about God is plain to them because God has shown it to them. For his invisible attributes, namely his power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world. Then 21, for although they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks to him, but became futile in their thinking, and their foolish hearts were darkened. I'll go with Paul on this one. They know God, and they're rejecting him. And so Satan has made a lot of counterfeits. And Hinduism has a lot of counterfeits, but there's enough snags to grab and to pull. And then just like if you have a knitted sweater and it's got a pull, and you pull on that string, eventually the whole thing will come apart. But you can pull on that string. And once you've pulled their argument apart, bring the gospel. Noah was declared righteous by faith and through grace. We are declared righteous by grace through faith. We have those things to counter, but we can also use them to show, hey, look, you had a flood story. And then bring them to the passage in Peter that talks about baptism saves and how and faith in Jesus Christ. And you utilize that to present the gospel. Okay. Key beliefs. This is one of the goddesses in Hinduism. Pretty little picture. But notice the flower she is in. It's a lotus. Where do any of you even know where a lotus grows?
On water, doesn't it?
It grows in water. Clear water, muddy water, mucky water, dirty water. What kind of water?
Mucky water.
Mucky water. Yep. And it's the perfect symbol for Hinduism. And the lotus is symbolic as much as the cross symbolizes Christianity. The lotus symbolizes Hinduism. It is beauty that comes up out of muck and mud and yuck. And it's the perfect picture of reincarnation. The seed falls, the root forms in the muck and mire, earth, and then eventually comes to sit on top, moksha. That is as much the symbol of Hinduism as the cross is to Christianity. Okay. Now, when you're talking with a Hindu, keep the personhood of God in your mind, because they don't have a personal God unless they are Tamil Hindu. All the others don't have a personal God. Again, these are all impersonal forces, and you hope to appease them through your sacrifice of prayer and meditation. You hope to secure blessings now and a better reincarnation. For Christians, God is not impersonal. Came as a baby who lived, grew up, taught, loved us, died for our sins, and rose again. Hinduism has a Messiah figure. They will not call him a Messiah. He's called a Kalki, and it's the 10th one they are waiting for. Just as in certain forms of Islam are waiting for the 13th Imam, Hinduism is waiting for the 10th Kalki, who is an appearance of Vishnu, who will come to end the world, judge the world, and everyone, whether they like it or not, gets absorbed into moksha. Okay, you get moksha into Atman, into Brahman, whether you like it or not. So Hinduism doesn't need to proselytize, because everyone's going to end up there anyway, whether you're a Christian, Mormon, Jewish, Muslim, atheist, agnostic. That's why you don't see them out preaching to us, because it doesn't matter. In the end, when Kalki comes, it's all gonna be over, the dream will be over, we'll all be reabsorbed into Brahman. Okay, therefore sin's not dealt with, because there is no sin, it's karma, okay? And it's reincarnation, not regeneration. So many times I have to explain that to people. Christianity has regeneration. That means your spirit that is dead in sin becomes alive unto God. Reincarnation is you die and you get sent back as something else or someone else. Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
The 10th Kalki, is that a person or an office, or what exactly do they mean by Kalki?
That's a person. Vishnu will come as a person. There's no like he gets born or he just suddenly appears. There's all variations of it, depending on which form of Hinduism you're talking about. And some forms don't even have the 10th Kalki, but most do. Most are waiting for the 10th Kalki, which is, for us to understand it, would be the second coming of Christ.
Okay.
Who comes to judge the living and dead.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Again, it's all just an illusion. In my class, I often post the Styx song because it is just such a great way for a Westerner who has the concept of this is reality to understand the Hindu concept that this is just a dream. It's just an illusion. So everyone's passing through, including the variants of gods. They're passing through too. They may come back in a different form. Humans, animals, everybody except for the ultimate Brahman are trying to attain moksha, which is to be reabsorbed back into him. In Hinduism, historically, you don't have medicines, hospitals as we do in the West. Especially during the Renaissance period, hospitals and places of care were built for the sick and dying. We cared for the mentally incapacitated, for the cripple. In Hinduism, no. You are messing with their karma. So you don't have places for the poor. This is why when we Westerners visit India or Nepal or any of the Hindu nations, we are shocked to see people begging on the side. Don't help them. The Roman Church also built hospitals for the lepers because they weren't being helped. They weren't given medicine. They weren't helped out of their misery. They were left there. Oh, they must have done something in their earlier life to end up that way. They're learning. They're being enlightened. Don't mess with their karma and their journey to moksha. So compassion is not found in ways we would think they should be found. Somebody is hit by a car, you go help them. Move them to the side of the road, call 911. In the Hindu worldview, they deserve to be hit. If they die, that's okay. They're coming back, and maybe they'll come back better. So you don't touch that. You don't, which is one reason Buddhism comes out of Hinduism, because Siddhartha saw that this idea of just leaving them in their misery and poverty while he was a prince, that can't be. So he developed a religion where you could lift up out of that, known as Buddhism. But it wasn't until the Christian missionaries arrived that hospitals were built, that medicine was given and developed. So Hinduism, it's not that they don't love, it's just they love you so much they're not going to mess up your karma. And since you're working your way to enlightenment and to moksha and nothingness, we don't want to interfere. And it's looked at more that you would be messing up what that person is doing and gaining in this life by helping them. So you don't. And it's obviously, because Western culture and Christianity came to India, much of that has changed. But go to a small little village in a place that doesn't have the gospel yet, and you're not going to find the Western idea of serving your neighbor. And that is a worldview that is shocking to most Hindus, that we serve each other. We do things to reach enlightenment. So how do you talk to a Hindu? Hindus love stories. Their scriptures are not so much doctrine as much as application. Stories of how teachings were applied. So they love stories. Ask them questions. Ask them questions about their stories. And then answer their questions about your faith. They love to talk about their faith. They admire Jesus. We got a ground point. We got a stone to step on. And then get to the next one. Use the parables of Jesus. They love stories. Jesus told stories all the time. They loved stories. They love hearing about the miraculous. So, talk about Jesus' miracles. And then the eyewitness testimonies. See, Hindus don't have eyewitness testimonies. They only have these stories from thousands of years ago that they're not even sure actually happened, but they're good stories to help us along the way. Well, we have eyewitnesses. Use that. And then explain to them Jesus, who they admire, said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Now you've given them the exclusivity of Jesus and the gospel. And then remember, you need to so emphasize grace because they're working their way to moksha. Good deeds, right knowledge, proper devotions, and amount of devotions, 3 times a day at least. We're saved by grace through faith in Jesus. He did the work. That will blow them away. What do you mean, Jesus, who I admire as a God? What do you mean he did the work? It will be the spark that gets them thinking, okay? And that Jesus said, no other God before me. There are no other gods. There are no other variations of me. Before Abraham was, I am. So the exclusivity of Jesus's claims and the fact that he alone is God and he alone is the way of salvation, not their works, not their good deeds or knowledge or devotions, none of that, but the works of Jesus. That's what you want to emphasize with them. Okay, resources. Let me get this in the right order. Okay, oops. Christianity and Comparative Religion, J.N.D. Anderson. Yeah, he was from like the 1940s, but still best top of the list. Next, The World's Religions, and then Christianity and World Religions, which I read from before. And then this major resource, The Kingdom of the Cults. But I can't emphasize strongly enough. Editions, 1965 or earlier.
Some experience at my former employment at the VA as a pathologist, and then a question. We had quite a few Indian physicians in the VA, including a lady who was next door to me. My office was next door to her. She was a pathologist, and she had pictures of these Hindu gods on her wall. She'd actually had a Christian elementary education over in India, but had given that up. And it sounds like they don't really insist that these gods or these stories are really true from what you said. It's they can just be like illustrations or parables, to draw an analogy, but they don't insist on their being historical. Is that correct?
Correct. You can, theoretically, and I'm sure there may be some or many, you can actually be an atheist because you're just going to get absorbed into the reality that is out there, which Hinduism calls Brahman. But you don't have to believe in him. You don't have to believe in Shiva or any of the gods. You can be an atheist, but you look at those as stories and teachings and how to better myself. Remember, 3 weeks ago, I guess now, I said that one of the elements that is in every religion is you're improving yourself. Well, if there's no such thing as sin, what am I improving myself about? Hinduism is about improving yourself to attain moksha. But you don't have to believe in an actual God. You can attain that through right knowledge, good deeds, and devotions. And prayers are not necessarily petitions, especially in Buddhism, which we'll get to. You're basically reciting the moral character of whoever you're praying to. We would use prayer. They would do meditation. So you're reciting in your brain, in your meditation, the moral character. So I I feel like sometimes I talk about Hinduism and I talk in contradictions. There aren't, you shouldn't be good to your neighbor because you're messing up their karma, yet you need to have good deeds to improve your karma.
So what would constitute good deeds?
Raising your family right, teaching them, attaining better cultural and societal status, be a scientist, doctor, attorney, businessman or woman. So
That would be like a good deed.
yes, because you're going to employ a lot of people, and that's a good thing. Although, don't hire the homeless person because they may be almost at that last stage, and the next one is moksha. And if you help them, you just messed up their last stage. It's, yeah. I always feel like I'm contradicting stuff when I talk about Hinduism because it is an inconsistent and I want to say illogical, but in the sense that there's no consistent logic to it. I know there's things in Christianity that are, Jesus became sin so that we might become the righteousness of God, and yet he's God. So that's what I mean. I know in Christianity there are things that look contradictory, but they're not. In Hinduism, they are contradictory. And in our Western mind, can seem illogical, but in the Hindu worldview and how they grew up, it's very consistent.
Oh.
Any other questions?
That was excellent.
Yes.
Okay. Next week we're going to talk about Buddhism because Siddhartha Gautama was a Hindu who developed Buddhism.
Mhm.
Because of some of the things that I spoke about today, the whole idea of not helping, not aiding. So it's a good one to kind of spring off of. And then we'll get into Islam and Mormonism and some of the other larger religions. So, all right then. Everything went
Thank you very much.
Yes.
That was great.
We didn't freeze.
Yeah.
I'm so happy, so grateful for this new computer. So, all right, everyone, I will send out invites next week. Same day, same time, I think. And everyone have a great week.
You too.
Okay, thank you.
You too. You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.